Hello, 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 and welcome. I am super excited to chat with you today about human design and nutrition. So, this podcast is going to be a little bit different than my normal podcast because we're going to dive into a little bit of how you can look at nutrition through the lens of human design. I do want to give a disclaimer, a couple of things. One, don't worry. My entire podcast ethos is not changing to be some biohacky style podcast, first and foremost. And second of all, what I am about to share is not medical advice. I am not a medical professional. This is not medical advice. And please do consult your healthcare provider for what is correct for you with respect to your nutrition. Now that I've gotten the disclaimer out of the way, let's dive into human design and nutrition. So, one of the things that I think is important for most entrepreneurs to understand is that we are high performing individuals, right? We give up perfectly good jobs to take massive risks to work for ourselves. And the reality with that is that we often have to work long hours and do things like someone who has a 9 to 5 normally wouldn't do. So I share all that because I do think that many entrepreneurs, they face burnout at one time or another, and they face challenges with their energy, and they face challenges with consistency. And, I have really been leaning into the fact that, self-care and putting yourself first and taking care of yourself as an entrepreneur is a radical act of self-care. And those radical acts of self-care really, when we as entrepreneurs put ourselves first, we can actually show up better for everyone in our lives. We can show up better for our clients and our family and our friends, and even in our writing. Like, everything that we do has an impact when we care for ourselves first. And so when we think about human design and nutrition and sort of energy optimization, I want to share with you something that I have been experimenting with probably for the last, 7 or 8 months at least, and my family has been experimenting with. So when we think about nutrition through the lens of human design, the food types that are optimal for us to eat, or based on my own experience, are rooted in the format channels. So if you know anything about format channels, when a format channel is present, it influences the entirety of the chart. So the format channels are as follows. 952, that is the format channel for the logic collective circuitry. We've got the 360, which is the format channel for the individual circuitry. And then we have the 4253, which is the format channel for the abstract collective circuitry. And so I have been doing a ton of research for my HD Wild program, which is my human design certification program, where you can come and you can study human design with me and really just weave it into your existing expertise. And in this process, I have discovered that each format channel is associated with a food type, and each format channel, when a format channel is there, it influences the whole chart. So I'm going to start with the individual circuitry. So the individual circuitry is the 360. It's the one in the middle that connects the sacral to the root. But when we think about format, the format energy that lives in the 360, and if we look at it from a circuitry perspective, there are multiple channels that are impacted by the circuitry. So it's the entirety of the individual circuitry that is impacted by this. So the channels and gates, the 6124, the 4323, the 81, the 214, the 360, the 3955, the 2212, the 3828, and the 5720. Those are all individual circuitry. And so when we look at that individual circuitry is moody. It exists in highs and lows, and it is acoustic by nature. So it only hears sort of selectively what it wants to hear. And so with individual circuitry, the food type that is associated with that individual circuitry, which is rooted in the 360, is sugar rush, sugar high, sugar low. And so to me, when we think about how that sort of relates to the moodiness that comes with that individual circuitry, right? It exists in highs, it exists in lows. And when you have individual circuitry, these are people who are always looking for the perfect mood, right? And so sugar, right, is a way to help you achieve, air quotes, that perfect mood, right? It gives you that high, and individual circuitry is always searching for that high, that mood, because when individual circuitry is at that high, it's magnetic, it's attractive, it's the glass is half full. Whereas when individual circuitry is not in the mood, right? Air quotes, they often hide away. They're often sort of antisocial. They're often sort of like meh, right? And so it would only make sense that the food type that is associated with that is sugars. Okay. And we even talk about, how that gate 3955 or the channel 3955, that is very much a stress eating gate, right? These are people who stress eat, right? And I can tell you that this is the truth because my husband in 2020 ate so many bags of M&Ms, and it was his coping mechanism. And it was all about getting that sugar high, getting that sugar rush, right? Even though with the sugar high comes a sugar low. And so that is what I have discovered with individual circuitry. Next up, we're going to come to the collective sensing circuit. And I have visuals that I will put on the website for you to see the gates and the visual that's associated with this as well. So next up, this is collective circuitry, and circuitry exists in like multiple layers, like everything in human design. So there's three main circuit groups: the individual circuit group, the collective circuit group, and then the tribal circuit group, right? So we were just talking about the whole of the individual circuit. Now in the collective circuitry, we are actually looking at a sub-circuit here. Okay. So there's the three major circuits, there's sub-circuits, and then within sub-circuits, there's also streams. So right now, what we're going to talk about is the sensing circuit aspect of collective circuitry. Okay. So this comes out of the format energy of the 4253, which is on the left-hand side of the sacral connected to the root. It includes the following gates and channels: 6447, 1156, 1333, 4629, 4253, 3041, and 3536. So the sort of ethos of the sensing circuit is this idea of beginnings, middles, and ends. And it all of this energy exists in cycles, right? It needs to go through the process. When we come to this sensing circuit, everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then a pause to reflect, and then you enter into a new cycle. And so the challenge with the circuitry is often people don't pause between the two things, and therefore they repeat the cycle. So this energy often has a lot of repeating cycles. And it's all about entering into a new cycle from an elevated state. And we can only enter into a new cycle from an elevated state when we pause and we reflect on the past so we can make the future better going forward. Okay. So when we come to this energy, the food that is associated with this is complex carbs and fats. Okay. So complex carbs are carbs that have to be sort of processed, right? They have to be broken down before they can actually turn into energy. And from a metabolic perspective, they take time in your system to actually be processed, right? They take time. And then we have fats here, right? So complex carbs and fats. And with that, with fats, they are the slowest foods to process, but they're also the most energy efficient. So the theme of all of this collective circuitry also is attached to the food that is associated with this. Okay. It's very interesting. And then we have the collective circuit, the third aspect here, the collective circuitry, which is the knowing circuit. This is the logical side. This originates out of the format channel 952, and it includes the following channels. It includes the 63.4, the 1762, the 31.7, the 15.5, the 952, the 58.18, and the 48.16. And so when we have this energy, right, we have to understand that the knowing circuit, the logic circuit, logic takes time in order for it to be proven. And Ra even goes on to talk about how so much of the logic circuitry or sub-circuitry is based on committees, right? It takes time to prove that something is logical. It takes time to spot a pattern and then take that pattern and test it and prove it to be true, right? And that's really the ethos of that logic knowing circuit. And when we come to the food that is associated with this, it's protein. Okay. So it's staying power. So it's slow, but it's really long lasting. Proteins are the longest lasting form of energy, and they are the building blocks for all aspects of like the human body. Like it is the fundamental building blocks that make someone healthy or not. So when we think about this, right, and with logic, we often have a lot of brain power, right? We have to use a lot of brain power when we use logic, because unlike the sensing circuit, it's more abstract, right? It's more visual. In the logic circuit, this is about patterns, repetitions, reps, right? Like doing the same thing over and over again, testing it, trying it, experimenting with it. And so when we think about what you need to actually do those things, you need protein, right? You need protein to actually make those things happen. And so I bring all of this to the table, and there's absolutely more to this. One of the things I'm going to add as an added bonus to the HD Your Biz program is a 4-week mini course on nutrition and sort of how all of this process happens through the lens of the body graph. But it's important to understand that this is ever present in the chart, right? So when we think about our design, right, and we think about, how do we actually make sense of this in a chart? What I want to do is I just want to share with you what I've been experimenting with. So I have a lot of collective logic energy. Okay. And I have almost 14 or 15 collective logic channels, or gates rather, in my chart. And I have been, for the last 7 or 8 months, experimenting with what does it look like for me to actually get the protein that I need in order to fuel my body. So I have 15 collective, I have I don't know, 7 or 8 individual and 4 tribal. And tribal, I'm not going to get into that tribal circuitry today, because that's more the process of how we actually digest food happens through that aspect. Okay. The tribal circuitry really influences how we digest food, where in our body certain processes happen, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I'm going to cover. I'm going to add, like I said, I'm going to add a little mini course for the HD Your Biz spring cohort as an added bonus. But I want to stay focused on the nutrition aspect. Sorry, I didn't mean to get distracted. So one of the things I've been experimenting with is like, how much protein do I need to actually sustain my energy? Because as a 3-5 projector, that is something that is always a challenge for me. It's something that I'm always dancing with the line of, where is the line for me so that I'm not pushing my body beyond what it is capable of. And in the last 7 or 8 months, I have upped my protein intake. I've started drinking bone broth. And I mean, quite frankly, I have 5 gate 9 placements. And that is really where this energy of protein is rooted from. So I've been experimenting with this, and I will tell you that as I've been tracking this over the last, 7 or 8 months, I notice a massive, massive, massive difference in my energy throughout the day when I eat lots of protein or not. And I've been drinking bone broth. I've been making sure that I have like eggs every morning, and it has honestly changed the game for me. And I'm not saying by any means that I'm perfect. However, I notice a massive difference in my body when I actually eat aligned to having more protein. And so my philosophy that I've been using has been double protein, half the carbs. And it has made a massive difference for me. Like, I cannot even tell you how much I notice a difference if I don't have my bone broth, if I don't start my day with like scrambled eggs. And it's been really, really powerful. And so we've been experimenting as a family with all of this. And my husband, he's more balanced. He has probably half collective abstract, half collective logic. And he actually has a ton of individual energy as well. And oftentimes we find he's sort of like the person who craves the sweets in the house, whether that's like a piece of fruit or, what M&Ms. And then when we take in this same philosophy and we've applied it to our children, it's kind of incredible, the results, because my oldest is, he likes to eat pretty vegetarian. He's a crazy 9-year-old in that he eats like foods that most 9-year-olds wouldn't eat. But when we have encouraged him to up his protein intake, because he has a lot of collective logic circuitry as well, it's really changed the game for him and his ability to sort of manage himself in his environment and all that sort of stuff. He also has a fair amount of the carb energy. So he's pretty balanced in the amount of energy that he has between the proteins and the complex carbs. And it's pretty incredible to witness this in real time with him. And now my youngest is like me. He has a ton of the logic energy, and not so much of the carbs or the sugars or anything like that. And so when we've worked with him, we notice because he's only 6 and he is a 2-4 quad split generator with 8 of the 9 centers defined. So he can be challenging. And we've noticed that when we feed him more proteins, he is far more agreeable. Cause I always joke, I've joked since he was like 3 years old. He's like he's like living with like a 98-year-old man and like a 6-year-old's body, because he can be really stubborn. And the nutrition aspect of this has played a massive impact in their sort of like happiness. Right. And like, I know this, right? We know this, we know it's like, it's good for our body to eat healthy food, obviously, but it's been very interesting to like actually witness it and watch it, because I often find with my youngest, my 6-year-old, if he eats too many carbs, because his brother likes to eat a lot of carbs, right? He's kind of split between the protein and the complex carbs. If my youngest tries to eat lots of carbs, he gets so cranky. And the reality is, when we've sort of massaged their food intake based on these findings that I found, it has really changed the game for our family. And, I just think, particularly for entrepreneurs, that if we want to be able to sort of optimize our ability to show up for our clients, and we want to optimize our ability for ourselves to really just like feel as amazing as we can in our bodies, then the nutrition aspect plays a huge part of that. And when we think about our bodies in general, like our brain is only 1/10th, 1/20th, I forget the exact numbers, but 1/20th, I believe, of our body mass, yet it uses up 20% of our energy. And so when we think about this, our ability to be in the not self or not is largely dependent upon our nutrition, right? If we are not getting the nutrients that we need to optimize our body in the correct way, we are far more likely to end up in the not self. Just because we're depriving our bodies from the nutrients that we need. And I think when we think about this through the lens of entrepreneurship, it's going to impact your decision making. It's going to impact how you support clients. It's going to impact all of these other aspects in your business, right? And so, of course, we need to also keep in mind that we digest food in an ideal way based on our determination variable. Our bodies operate best in a certain environment based on our environmental variable. I'm not even taking that into account here, but that is something that is important to consider in all of this. But the reality is, our bodies have specific nutrient needs that we can look to our chart to help us discern sort of the proper percentages, if you will, of which types of foods are optimal for us to eat. And of course, this is not by any means medical advice. I just have been in this experiment doing this for a while, and I thought it would be very powerful to share with each of you sort of the results of the experiment. And I've been taking it pretty seriously for myself in the past, I would say 30 to 45 days. I've really double down because I had an accident in August where I severely hurt my ankle, and I gained a little bit of weight, and I haven't gained weight in, I don't know, probably since my with the exception of my pregnancies, I haven't really gained weight in, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And I have been trying to feed myself in the way aligned to my chart. And I've already lost 7 pounds simply just doing that. And I only gained 12, 15 pounds in total since August. And it's been incredible. And it's not only been incredible in terms of just like, I can feel my body feeling more expansive in when I feed it in this way, but it also has made a huge difference in my energy throughout the day. I'm not as exhausted in the afternoon. I don't necessarily always feel like I need to take a nap. Like it's really, really impacting me in an incredibly positive way. So I wanted to share that with you. You know, there is a whole other aspect of this in terms of like the digestive process and, yeah, there's a whole other aspect to like how this actually happens through the lens of the body graph. But I thought that this piece on nutrition and circuitry was too good not to share in a podcast episode. So of course, this is not medical advice. Consult your medical professional. I need to put that disclaimer there. However, I encourage you, if you feel called to, if it feels aligned for you, and if not, go on to the next episode. But if it feels aligned to you, I would go and experiment. I would experiment with which gates I have present within this sets of circuitry. And then I would add it up, tally it up, and then I would go and experiment because that's what I have done. And I've really tried to tune into making sure that I'm aligned in terms of my determination variable, which is, you know, how we're designed to digest food, information, etc. I am calm touch. So I've tried to make sure that I've been very involved in my food preparing process and that I am touching, I'm calm, etc., etc. It's been massive differences. Like I am blown away by the results of it. And so I just encourage you to experiment if you feel called to, and if that feels aligned for you. And if you want to explore this further, I am going to do a mini course for the HD Your Biz Spring cohort. It's going to be a 4-week mini course. It's going to happen in June and July. And I will go through everything that I've learned and experimented with in my research in terms of the gates and the channels and the sensors that are present with respect to sort of nutrition and health and sort of energy optimization through the lens of the body graph. So you are welcome to join me in the HD Your Biz program. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or share your results. Jamie L. Palmer on Instagram. And of course, I will also take the visuals that I've created for this and put them in the blog. So if you want to check out those visuals so you can visually see which gates are impacted by which things and which types of food, you will be able to visually go and see that happen. So thank you so much for tuning in to the HD Your Biz show. I appreciate you and have a fantastic day.